Okay, here we go. So today we're going to talk about accessing regional center services. And we're really going to cover kind of two topics. We're going to talk a little bit about what common regional center services are based on age group. And then we're going to go into how do you request those services? What does that process look like? This fall, we're having two different Community Navigator workshops. We're having this one today, and then on October 28th, we'll be covering generic services, which may be something that you have heard, a term you have heard. We'll be talking about programs like IHSS, SSI, Medi-Cal, CalFresh. We'll be talking about the eligibility requirements for these programs and how to apply for these programs. So drop back in with us for that one or pick it up on our YouTube channel. Just a little bit about Family Focus, if you don't know about us. We are a service of California State University Northridge's Special Education Department. We serve folks in the Northeast and Northwest districts of LAUSD. We also serve the North Los Angeles County Regional Center. And we have offices, we have four offices, one at CSUN, and then one in each of the North Los Angeles County Regional Centers. So Santa Clarita, Antelope Valley, and in Chatsworth. So we are a family resource center, which means we serve, that funding comes from the Department of Developmental Services, and we serve families of regional center consumers. And then we're also a family empowerment center, and that funding comes from the California Department of Education. And that means we serve families of children with who are in special education. We are also all either parents or family members of someone with a disability, so that we have navigated these waters ourselves. Here are links to our website where there's so much information, and also our YouTube channel where we have lots of different workshops. I encourage you to check it out. There's all kinds of great stuff on there, and you can watch it whenever. It's nice. Okay, all right. We are going to dive in. First, we're going to just briefly review what are regional centers. So regional centers, there's 21 in California. They provide a range of services to people with developmental disabilities. The purpose of the regional center is to keep individuals living safely and independently in their own communities. Now, this will come into play later when we start talking about services and requesting services. It's always important when you're approaching a disability service to understand the purpose of that service, because it's going to help you request services. So, the purpose of the regional center, to keep individuals living safely and independently in their own communities. So North Los Angeles County Regional Center serves San Fernando, Santa Clarita, and the Antelope Valley. So North LA has three different programs. We're going to go over it just a little bit really quickly because there are different services that are available in each program. So Early Start is the first program. It covers individuals ages 0 to 3. This is a federal program. Every state has some version of Early Start, and that is our federal early intervention program. Then after the age of 3, we have what's are called Lanternman services. And the reason we call them Lanternman services is because Frank Lanterman wrote the legislation that created the regional center system. So that's why we have that name. This is specific to California. Some states have similar programs, but not every state. And within the Lanterman services, there's 3 age groups. School age is 3 to 13. Transition is 14 to 21, and adult is age 22 and up. More recently, it's a few years old, they added a provisional category. And what this was for 3 and 4-year-olds who were often coming out of early start, or maybe they didn't get identified early enough for early start. They may not have a diagnosis, they may not meet all the requirements for Lanterman, but there is a developmental delay going on there. And what they wanted to do with this program was to make sure we weren't losing these kiddos and that kiddo didn't leave early start at 3 and then end up back when they were 6 because they were having issues in school. So that was kind of the goal of that program. I'm going to briefly go over the eligibility requirements because it helps you understand kind of what's different about each program. And there are transitions between the programs too. So early start eligibility, this is birth to age 3. The only thing you need to qualify for early start is a 25% delay in one or more developmental area, or a high risk of developmental delay. So this would be often kiddos who are coming out of the NICU will often be referred to early start. Maybe we don't know if they have a developmental delay, but they're at a higher risk. This is Department of Developmental Services. The link here is to their early start page, which there's a ton of really great information if you are interested in learning more about early start. Okay, so here's Lanterman eligibility. Shifts when you turn 3 and we move into this state program, this California program. There are 5 qualifying diagnoses for Lanterman services: intellectual disability, autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, although it does have to be epilepsy that is pretty much not controlled so that it's causing developmental issues. And category 5 is any condition that's closely related to intellectual disability. And the condition must have been present before the age of 18. That's the developmental piece. And the disability must be substantial. So it has to impact functioning, which is another thing you will hear a lot when you are applying for any kind of disability-related service. How does this disability impact function? It isn't just about the diagnosis, right? Here you can see it's 2. It's yes and. Yes, they need the diagnosis, and they need that functional limitation. And then provisional, like I explained, it's kind of that safety net for those kiddos who may not have a diagnosis yet, but they need to have a disability that's not solely physical in nature, and they must have 2 significant functional limitations. Health services may not be available to children in the provisional unit, so you do need to check with your service coordinator if you're in provisional. So this is something you will probably hear, that regional centers are a payer of last resort. And so what does this mean? This means that first you have to go through other resources for certain services. So Medi-Cal or insurance, here's 2 places where this shows up a lot. So if your insurance covers ABA, you will need to go through your insurance or Medi-Cal first to access ABA. If your insurance does not cover ABA or denies it, so, oh, well, this kiddo doesn't need it, or says they're done with ABA, that happens sometimes. They don't need ABA anymore. Then you can go through regional center. Now, when kiddos are transitioning out of early start at age 3, it changes. So the school district is responsible for preschool. Maybe in early start, they got a developmental program, right? A center-based developmental program. After the age of 3, the school district's going to be responsible for preschool. The school district is also responsible to provide speech, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. All right, we'll go over some common regional center services. First, I'm going to go over some that are common for all ages. So respite, daycare, and personal assistance. These are, I hesitate to call them childcare because that is its own sort of special category. But these are to help care for your child or your adult disabled child. So, but each of them applies in a slightly different situation. So respite is when you need to run errands or get a break, and it must take place in the family home. Daycare is when both caregivers need to work, or go to school, and regular daycare isn't an option, right? You can't, Boys and Girls Club or YMCA after school is not going to work. Um, Daycare must also take place in the family home, and this is for when you're working or going to school. Then the final category is personal assistance. So children can have personal assistants for sure. Adults often have personal assistants, and this is for individuals who need help with personal care or supervision for behaviors. And it can take place in the home, or it can also take place in the community. So these are three very common services, and they're a little bit different. And I don't know that we don't always dig into how they're different, but this is how they're different. Um, and then here's two behavioral services. So we have behavioral management services. That's the regional center service. That's what they call ABA. It's ABA. So you must go through your insurance company first, and then if you're denied or it doesn't cover, then regional center will pick it up. And ABA is really about behaviors. So it's really about managing behaviors that can interfere with functioning, learning skills, those kinds of things. Usually they'll say ABA should happen first, and then the child, sometimes they'll say graduates sort of from ABA and moves on to adaptive skills training. They are similar services, but adaptive skills is going to be broader, and it's really focusing on that skill acquisition, and can be tailored to whatever the individual needs, whatever age they are. So adults can get adaptive skills training for taking the bus, for going to a restaurant and ordering food. So kind of a wide range, really more about acquiring those skills. That's adaptive skills training. It's not usually covered by insurance. So this is typically covered by regional center when it's needed. Social recreation and non-medical therapies. So this includes camps, classes, lessons, should promote the child's socialization and inclusion in the community. And then there's non-medical therapy. So these would be therapies that aren't included in your insurance. Sometimes equine therapy is not. If it was with a licensed therapist, then it would have to go through insurance. But sometimes it's just, spending time with horses. Art therapy, music therapy should promote wellness, socialization, and inclusion. The link here is to a really great training presentation that North LA has on their website about social rec. So I encourage you to look at that if you have more questions. It's pretty good. So there's two methods of payment for social rec. First is direct payment from the financial management service system. Needs to be authorized and set up before beginning classes. This is true for all social rec. You need to get approval. You need to get that authorization written into your IPP before you start classes and get reimbursement. When you do direct payment through the FMS company gets the funds from North LA and then pays the provider directly. So parents don't have to pay out of pocket. It can take a little while to get it set up. I'm not sure how things are running right now. They were backed up, but so you may have to follow up to make sure that it's set up. You can also do parent reimbursement. That's also going through the financial management system right now. again, needs to be authorized and set up before beginning classes. So you won't be able to get reimbursed for anything that you paid for before that authorization was in place. You are going to have to fill out some financial paperwork, and then you'll pay out of pocket. You'll submit it's like an invoice and then proof of payment. So you have to either the check or the credit card payment, and then the FMS will reimburse. All right, so we're going to go through common services in each category. Early start services, you get the occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, and sometimes they'll do developmental therapy or the developmental programs. And then after the age of 3, school district is responsible for speech, PT, and OT. Oh. School age services. So North LA calls it socialization training, but that's a social skills group. It's a lot of ABA and adaptive skills going on in this time frame. And then social rec and respite and daycare and personal assistance. Those are pretty much for all the Lenormand age groups. Once you move into transition age services, and it's 14 to 22. If you're wondering why it stops at age 22, why adulthood begins at age 22, that's because that's when, if you don't graduate with a diploma, you can receive special education services up to the age of 22. So at 22, there can be changes for regional center consumers. So that's why they did it that way. There are some additional programs that come into play that you might not have heard about. Community integration training. So that's really, what are your goals about safety and learning in the community? There are college supports that are available. From Regional Center, there are certain programs that are available. Socialization training, and then the other skills as well, or the other services as well. With adult services, independent living skills or supported living skills. Independent living skills is for adults living with their families or on their own. Supportive living skills, they need more significant, if they have more significant needs. But these are really great services that can help with all different kinds of supports. There's also day programs, there's employment training, there's money management as well. So really, many services that are available for adult consumers. I wanted to mention a couple that you might not have heard about. Coordinated Career Pathways is a new program from Department of Developmental Services through Regional Center. It's for individuals within 2 years of leaving special education. So either 2 years before or 2 years after graduation. And what the person who works with you will do is they'll create a person-centered career plan, and then they help identify and coordinate services and supports. And it says career, but that's defined really broadly. I mean, maybe if the individual wants to volunteer, if the individual wants to go to school, go to community college, if the individual wants to do a micro business, right? So it's pretty broad. What's nice about this service is you could use this to help you plan that transition out of special education and into adult programs. There's more information at this link, but I think it sounds like a really interesting program. So then here, this link is to Regional Center Common Services. So it's a really nice chart that lists, not all of them, but most regional center services, and describes them and then says what age group they are available in. So yeah, now I'm going to introduce Christy. Are you there, Chris? Yay, there's Christy. And she's going to cover this next piece.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christy Lacey. I'm another community navigator for the Family Focus Resource Center. And I'm excited to talk about requesting regional center services. Are there following slides or do you want me to chat?
Sorry, yes, there's slides.
Okay, great. Okay, perfect. So one thing that was briefly mentioned before, but that is really important when you are requesting a service of regional center is that the need trumps everything. So whenever you're coming with a request, there has to be a need that is involved. A goal will be formulated of how to accomplish that need, and then that's what equals the service. So you're really working backwards to get to the service that it is that you're looking to request. Again, we put this up here. It's reminding you of the categories that are served by the regional center. Remember that the purpose of the regional center is to help individuals live safely, independently, and in their own communities. So when you're requesting a service, how is it going to be keeping them safe? How is it going to promote independence? And how is it going to promote them being out and about within their community? So needs, goals, and services should be related. Safety, how does it keep you safe? How is it going to integrate you into your and allow you to participate in your local community? How does the service build independent skills? And how does it allow you to remain at home? Does this service allow you to stay in your preferred living situation? So this could be help to your current caretakers. That would cover the respite, the daycare, personal assistance. Allowing that assistance allows you to stay at home. So again, needs drive services. So if we are saying that we want to go in and have, I want in-home daycare, they first need to establish a need. Why is there a need for in-home daycare? Are all the caregivers in the home working or going to school during certain hours? Why are aftercare programs not an option? Why is there a need? So always bringing it back to that point. And because I'm always talking about it, I will say that on that chart that showed the respite, the in-home daycare, and the personal assistance, if you have a need, each one of those serves a different need. If you have a need for all three, you are able to get all three or request all three. They just can't be used at the same time. So if you have a need to get out of your house and to take a break, then you have a need for respite. If you are also working during the day and your child can't go to aftercare, then they also need that. If when you are home with your child, you need an extra set of hands or they need a one-to-one out in the community, then you also need personal assistance. So all of those are tied to a different need. So just a reminder again of what equals a of what equals a service. So here, if you're asking for a service and you're saying, I really want my child to go to a social skills group, what is the need for a social skills group? So here we have Mateo. Mateo loves to be around people, but doesn't know how to approach other kids and start a conversation. So maybe when your child goes to the playground, they're overwhelmed by the amount of kids, they're trying to get into the group, there's too much happening sensory wise, and it's just really hard for them to practice social skills in that way. So Mateo needs a controlled environment and coaching on how to navigate those interactions. He also needs more opportunities to practice. So therefore, going to a social skills program, it's a controlled environment. There's somebody who's facilitating. There's someone who can step in to help him. And he's getting this weekly set apart time where he can consistently go and practice the skills that he's learning. I know for my child, like for social skills, he works off scripts. So going to social skills gave him scripts of how to say, hi, my name's Atlas. Would you like to play with me? And learning those scripts was so helpful for him. So maybe your child thrives off of that. The goal, you and your service coordinator, you may not come in already with a goal. You may not even come in already with a service in mind, but as long as you can communicate the need, you and your service coordinator can then come up with a goal. So what is the goal? The goal is for Mateo to gain the tools and confidence for making friends and interacting at an age appropriate level. Right? So what is the service that would help him reach that goal? Mateo would benefit from the tools learned and the consistent practice of a weekly social skills group. This would give him the ability and confidence to approach peers. And that is how the service serves the consumer's need and goal. So again, you don't have to be a pro at this if you are able to, but maybe this formula just helps you think about what the needs are. And maybe you don't even know what the service is that serves it. But again, if you can just identify the need, then you can get yourself to the service that fits. So here are some prompts that we came up with of how to identify the need of questions to ask yourself. What does your child need help with? What does your child want to do? What specific challenges is your child facing? How does this need relate to safety, community integration, independence, and remaining at home? That's how you know that the need is going to be met by the regional center. What is the measurable goal for this need? What can your child learn? What skills can your child gain? And what can your child access with the support? How does it give them increased access? And then the service, what service or support will help your child reach that goal? So this is what we mean by working backwards. I heard about this really great service. What is the need? What goal would it help us accomplish? And that's what gets you back to the service. So if you can always remember to work backwards and that need is the most important thing to have clear, you're going to have a lot easier time asking and requesting services. More tips for requesting social recreation. You can send your coordinator a flyer or a website with a link to details about the class. Particularly, they're going to want to know what day of the week the class is, who to contact about it, and how much the class costs. So, service, I'd like to request a dance class for Natalie. She needs to socialize with more non-disabled peers. The dance class will give her the opportunity to practice social skills in a controlled environment, doing something that she loves. So even for something like social rec, where the request is just to have them do something they love, the point of social rec is to have them in their community and to have them around individuals in their community socializing. So how are these things going to help them socialize? How is it going to help them spend more time out of the house and in their community?
Okay, thank you. Um,
Oh,
we'll, we'll take questions in just a minute. Excuse me. I wanted to include this from Regional Center. Um, this is a question we get asked often. If you aren't hearing from your service coordinator, maybe you don't have a service coordinator. This is what Regional Center suggests doing. Your first step is to contact the service coordinator. The next step, if you're not getting a response, is to contact the supervisor. And then the last step is to contact the parent and family support specialists. This link kind of walks you through that process of contacting your service team if you're having difficulties. So we did want to include that. This is the Parent and Family Support Specialist hotline. So if you're having difficulties, give them a call. They'll kind of start a case, so they will mark down the challenges that you're having. So it's nice to kind of start a paper trail. And for applying for Regional Center, or if you have questions about requesting more services, feel free to give us a call. And I placed in the chat the link to our Google intake form. So if you're having difficulty accessing regional center services, let us know. If you live in North Los Angeles County Regional Center area, although if you don't, every regional center does have a community navigator program, and we can connect you with the Family Resource Center who's running that. Uh, oh, so our next workshop, I said, will be on October 28th. And on October 12th, we are having our expo. And this year we're doing it, our resource fair this year we're doing in with Regional Center. So it's going to be pretty big. It's at CSUN. There's a couple cool things. First of all, register and you will get free lunch, which is exciting. We're all excited about it. It's from California Chicken Cafe, so we're excited. But also a really neat thing that we're doing with Regional Center this year is we're having a red carpet social, which is like a dance for adults and a mixer for adult consumers. So there's a couple really cool things happening this weekend, and feel free to hit us up if you want more information on that. Okay, I will stop the share and I will stop recording.